Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This podcast is made from the spaces I host every week on the Clubhouse app in the Social Impact Level Up Club. If you don't know me, I'm Wendy V, and I am a coach for socially conscious entrepreneurs. I help you develop your social impact mission, clarify your vision, and turn your ideas into action. Every week, I talk to leaders with a social impact mission about money mindset and manifestation. We also hold weekly spaces for our collective to join forces and change the world. In each episode, you'll hear me moderate the conversation with my two co-hosts, Rodrigo Bravo and Santiago Cáceres. Through this podcast, we hope that you will learn, grow, and thrive with our collective. Now, here's a little bit more about this episode. In this episode, we'll talk about the gift of entrepreneurship. It's more than the freedom of schedule or the freedom to run your business the way you want. It's also about being responsible to yourself, creating the corporate culture you want to have, supporting the things you believe in, working with who you want to work with, creating generational wealth, and being there for your children. It's also about moving past toxic employment situations and believing in your purpose. I hope you enjoy this episode, and our conversation takes place between me and Rodrigo Bravo in the Clubhouse room that we created under the Social Impact Level Up Club to talk about exactly these kinds of topics. They're talking about the reason why most people want to start a business, and there's a couple of things that stood out to me when I was looking at this article that I thought was interesting, because they summed up basically most of the people that I've ever heard on this platform talking about starting a business in one sentence, which is the number one reason most people want to become their own boss is freedom, satisfaction, and the flexibility it offers them. So I think that they're kind of offering three sort of reasons why, but a lot of people I hear are really kind of talking about the freedom as the main part of it, and other things kind of trickle from that. And so, I would really think about it, at least for me, it's mostly in terms of having a flexible schedule, the freedom to choose when and where I work, and then being oversight free. So in my thought process, when I'm considering building my business and thinking about, the day-to-day, if I get discouraged, or I have a day of lower motivation, or I get upset about a challenge, what often resonates with me to bring me back to center of why I'm doing this in the first place is these three reasons. I want to have a flexible schedule. I want to have the freedom to work when and where I want to, and I want to be my own oversight, because I'm kind of over people being over me. And so that is where, for me, being an entrepreneur is really, really enticing. Now, if you layer that with kind of a social impact lens, the freedom offers you sort of a fourth thing, which is to care about the things that you care about, right? So you don't have somebody else telling you, hey, I want you to go build wells in Haiti. You are able to say to yourself, okay, I want to take this endeavor on in building wells in Haiti and making an impact. I also know that by being an entrepreneur and building my business, it affords me more opportunities to support the things that I want to support. So the causes that I want to support. So I would add that fourth piece to the freedom part, which is, supporting whatever causes that you are passionate about. And then the article goes on to give two other kind of, I think, pretty helpful statements in summarizing this. Nothing beats the freedom of being the boss, at least when it comes to the entrepreneurial efforts of small business owners. With freedom comes the flexibility to make your own schedule and not have to answer to anyone. So I think that kind of continues with the first three. And then they go on to say most people who start their own business have the built-in desire to be their own boss, to make their own schedule and not answer to anyone. So this is really their, basis of the whole article, is that, you're kind of coming into this space, being your own boss, not answering to other people, and having these freedoms that entrepreneurship gives you. And so those things are what I would call the gift of entrepreneurship, which is, being able to make these choices for ourselves, being able to add in, this social impact mission to your business and having the choice to figure out what that is and what that looks like. So that's what I'm calling the gift of entrepreneurship in this room. And I know, Rodrigo, welcome. And you just came in a little bit late, but I'll give a quick recap. And so today we're here in the Social Impact Entrepreneur Collective. We're talking about the number one reason most people want to be their own boss. And that is what I'm calling the gift of entrepreneurship. It's kind of made up of having the flexibility and freedom to do what you want and to be oversight free. And I'm adding on that the ability to support whatever cause that you are passionate about. So that is what we're discussing today. I'm curious to hear from folks as I was expressing to you what the room is about today. If you've had similar thoughts or reasoning for choosing entrepreneurship, and also if you have added as well, like, sort of your social impact mission to your business because of the flexibility that it offers you, the freedom to do so. So I'm curious about that. I'm also curious if you've had a different experience of why you chose entrepreneurship, if you want to share that, or if there's any other thoughts that you have. So I'm going to open it up for popcorn style. If you haven't introduced yourself yet, feel free, Kurt and Jessica, to kick us off and introduce yourselves and share your opinions. But that is the room today, and welcome.
So I guess what started me and my journey is, yeah, the freedom's nice, but I always thought entrepreneurship was like a bad thing because my mom was always like, "Oh, you're gonna have to pay so many taxes when you own your business," and so there was like this fear-based reason as to holding off. But now, as I'm like getting into it more, I think what has driven me more is actually my mom's attachment to her job. So she's been working in accounting for a while, and she's had so many job changes because of the economy, and then also what she's experienced. Like, she's experienced ageism, and then this constant, like, oh, she works with a company now where they don't really consider her like in her life. They're like, oh, you have to move 3 hours away because we're opening up our office here. And so I just saw how disposable she was, and she's in her 60s. And I know that for some people that isn't the case, but my mom, she dropped out of college because she had me, and then when she was a single mom, she kind of had to be resourceful, and she just fell into this accounting situation. And it's sad because she has so much experience, but she doesn't have the degree to back it up. And so somebody with the credentials kind of comes in, she's kind of just disposed of. And so that freaked me out for my future with my children. And so I knew with entrepreneurship, it's kind of the same situation with, you never know what's going to happen. It's your company, it could be that your business flops, right? So those are realities that could happen. But I think what kind of gave me this sense of security is that um, as an entrepreneur, you do have flexibility, and then you also start to understand what investing in your life is like.
Wendy, it's always great to be in your rooms and great to see everybody that I've had heard speak before. My perspective is that I am in the middle of creating. I created a company called Stronger in 90. It's basically online course creation with a personal training background. And really, to me, I get to create the culture. And I heard, some of the things as far as the freedom, and I don't have to answer to anybody. And it's kind of like, I may not have to answer to a boss, a manager, a president, or whatever, but I still have to, in a service-based industry, I still have to answer to my customers and make sure that, one, I'm clarifying what my product or program is, and that I'm meeting their needs and expectations type thing, and make sure that my messaging is clear and all of that. But, I do have the freedom to go, if I was in like in a corporate structure, where if there's some BS out there that I know is BS, but that's the adopted thing with the culture then, or with the company that I might be an employee of, I don't have to implement that in my company. Like, I can just say, hey, that's BS. And this is why I think that. And if you don't think that, that's okay. I ultimately, I want the best for all of my customers. So anyway, that's all I had to say.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, thanks guys for jumping right in there. And I think, Jessica, I think I love that idea of generational wealth being a motivator for you and trying to figure out, well, how do you break the cycle of, not having the ability to go after your dreams or feeling like you're stuck in this place that doesn't value you or doesn't, really want you there, essentially doesn't care if you're there. And I think that kind of gets to Kurt's point about the BS corporate structures. Like I think all of us probably have had a job where we went to a place and we felt like we were trapped there for 8, 9, whatever, 10 hours out of the day because, you're engaging in a structure in a company in a way of doing business that it doesn't show, you that they value you, but also might not espouse your values as a person. And so I think there's a number of ways why, that kind of word freedom can be really enticing in a lot of different ways because I think that is somewhat of the freedom that entrepreneurship offers you is to be free of the ability, I mean, the need to accept this BS as your own because you don't really need to. And yeah, and I agree, you can build your company in another way. So, yeah, welcome more conversation. Anybody have anything else you want?
For me, what made it really important, and I'm a single mom, but even before I became a single mom, the moment I became a mom, I wanted to be a mom that was available to my kids. And I didn't ever want to have to deal with the stress of trying to explain to a boss why I need to be home with my sick child or why, they need me, having to like deal with that stress. So the moment I was vice president of a commercial insurance company. And the moment I got pregnant with my first child and the pregnancy was difficult and it became an issue, I quit and, have gone, had many businesses and have really had to hustle, but have chosen to, like, this is the better path than to be under, someone telling me if I can go home for my child.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that I think I've said this multiple times. I grew up in a single parent household, and there is nothing like that, child being dependent completely on you and only you to really make you make some hard decisions. So, Tiffany, I appreciate what you're saying completely because I think that is hard to not only make yourself, solely responsible, but 100% available and, making the choice to say, no, I want to be 110%, like always, always available. So I think that's great. And thank you for that. Anyone else want?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in really quick on what Jessica had said earlier. I really appreciate her sharing the story about her mom because I think a lot of people that's really the biggest issue, right? Stability or the lack of security, right? And I went through that myself. I changed industries 3 times, going from education to construction to transportation. And I was always stuck in that mindset, like, man, I got to find something. This, I got to do this. I tried kind of a, my side hustle at one point, and it didn't go as I planned. And then I had a business with a partner, and that didn't go as planned. So I was always kind of like, man, kind of hesitant. But then, I had a kind of this year's just been kind of different, and I just decided to just venture on my own. And you said, the gift. And I think yes, it is it's a gift. You are your own boss. You have your own things. There's just a lot of responsibility and discipline that comes with that. But you get to adjust that, and you get to factor in what you do want to do. And like Tiffany was saying, I want to be there for my child. Some folks, have flexibility in that. That's great. But for her, she wanted the ultimate flexibility and be there as well, as she sees fit. And so when we make these decisions, I think that's really important. And one thing I wanted to say, I think somebody, I think may have been Kurt who mentioned it. But you don't want to deal with other people's BS, right? You want to deal with your own BS. I mean, and I say that not like in a mean way or like you're lying to people or anything like that. But there's an episode of Seinfeld where the Jerry lies on behalf of George to another lady and says like, "Oh, he's a marine biologist." And then George says, why did you tell her I'm a marine biologist? He goes, what am I going to tell her? He goes, you always knew I wanted to be an architect. And he's like, well, you're not an architect. Yeah, but I always wanted to be that. He goes, well, it doesn't matter. It's a lie. He goes, yeah, but you made the lie. It's my lie, I can handle it. And I know it's kind of an extreme analogy, and I don't want to talk about like lying, but when it's your thing, when it's your problem, when it's your issue that you're dealing with, It's totally different than when you're dealing with the boss's issue or a company policy or something like that. You can make your own adjustments, like Kurt was saying. Like, you know what? I don't want to follow that policy. Well, it's your business. You can create it however you want. Myself, for example, I don't. I'm gonna choose who I do business with, straight up, and I'm gonna take the lead as some others that I've seen where, like, you know what, I'm not gonna compromise my values just to make a buck. I'm gonna make money. I'm gonna do what I need to do based on my terms, on my conditions, and with the folks that I feel bring value and they share in my values. And I think that's really for me the biggest gift, that I get to do work with people that I want to do work with, as opposed to being in a company where maybe I'm going to be dealing with people that maybe I don't agree with, or there's sometimes some issue there that would prevent me from really working with them if it weren't for that company. So I think that's part of the gift. But I really appreciate you holding the space, Wendy, as always. My name is Rodrigo.
No, and I think you're right, Rodrigo. It is definitely a gift in a lot of the sense of what you're talking about. But I think one thing that resonated with me is the idea of, like, it's your BS, like it's your thing, like I think that about that a lot. Like, well, you created this way, or, like, when you're kind of sitting there like, hey, why did this go this way? You're like, oh wait, that was you did that, you made that decision, and it led to XYZ thing, and it's a learning process, right? But it's my learning process. It's a process that I believe in, with the things that I believe behind it. And I don't want to, or I don't have to, give 110% of my energy to something that I don't believe in. And so even if there was a challenge or a mistake or a hiccup or whatever that I created, it's still mine. And I think that, that ownership and that responsibility is a huge one that I think, a lot of us have or continue to learn. So welcome
I
Ada to the stage. Oh, go ahead, Rodrigo.
Really quick before we go to Ada, I know she's going to share something fantastic. You're absolutely right, Wendy. I mean, even this week, did take off to California, had a fantastic time. And I told my clients, hey, I'm going to be busy vacationing, but I'm going to work with you and da 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 da, right? And and one client was like, oh, hey, I want to, can we speak and blah 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 this time? And I had a choice. I was like, okay, am I gonna talk to the client, possibly run, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, or just tell the client, hey, I can't make it. Can we, reschedule this and this and that? Being able to have that liberty, right, of doing that, and honestly making up an excuse. Oh, you know what? No, I'm busy. I'm doing this, or hey, you know what? Whatever the case may be, that's kind of the gift. It can be a curse too, but it's definitely a gift when you have that flexibility and you're able to just say, hey, you know what? I'm choosing to do this, as opposed to having some type of mandate or working for someone where you don't really have that choice. And I think that's a big part of it. But it's again a great gift, but also with great gifts come great responsibilities.
I had to do that too while we were in Denver, and it wasn't even like a long vacation, but it was a really short vacation. And the same thing, I had to tell a client, hey, I don't have time to do this 15-minute call right now. Let's reschedule it. And luckily it was rescheduled. And I've also had clients who haven't shown up right at the same time. So I think that it's a 50-50 either way. People may not show up for you when you're willing to be there. And then also other times you may have to decide not to be there and try to show up another time, and they may not go with you, right? So it's sort of you never know. But if that's your client and that's really someone who's supposed to be working with you, I do believe that, they will still work with you after the rescheduling. So good example, Rodrigo, because I think that these are all practical things that, come up in your business, but how you deal with them is the difference. And so what I would think of the way you're talking about it, Rodrigo, is if you were an irresponsible person and made this a habit, obviously your business would not succeed. But you're not an irresponsible person. This is sort of a one-off, and it's your prerogative to be able to do this. This is why you're a business owner. So it's not something that's going to really impede your business over the long run, because it's not you being flaky in your business or something like that. So I think it's a good point to say, obviously over excessiveness of anything, exploiting the gift that you've been given, could also mean, that your business is not going to be as successful as you would want it to be. So I think it is this balance that we're trying to create. But welcome Ada and Marisol to the conversation. If you guys want to introduce yourself, check in, say how you're doing, and then join the conversation. I'll reset the room Today, we're talking about the number one reason most entrepreneurs start a business, which includes freedom, flexibility, kind of being oversight free, supporting your passion. But we've added a lot to that list, which I love. And I'm going to end up turning this into, I always say I'm going to turn these into blog posts. I'm like 5 blog posts behind, but this is a really good one. And it should be pretty easy to take everything. So we talked about, building generational wealth, being available for your kids and your family, creating your own culture behind your business, not taking somebody else's BS or adopting other corporate culture, but being able to create your own. And then also where you're making these decisions, being responsible for the decisions that you make in your business and not compromising your values so that you can work with those who you want to work with. So I think this is a pretty fly list, guys. But let's keep going. So Ara and Marisol, what do you guys?
Awesome. Okay. Well, I just first want to say, Rodrigo, I am your biggest fan. I absolutely love listening to everything that you have to say. You always have excellent points and input to add to these conversations. So with that, I give you your guavajarritos that you so very much love. But I really
Guava I need that. What?
I really resonated with Tiffany because as a single mom, I know how challenging that can be, and I do carry a lot of mom guilt to this day with just having committed so much time to the industry that I was working in and not being there for my kids as much as I wanted to be. But my daughter's 22 now. My son is 19. They're both in college. I've been able to pay for their college and put them through school. So for that, I'm very proud of everything that I have accomplished. And I know that I've raised 2 very hardworking, solid kids with excellent, solid work ethic. So everything that I sacrificed has paid off in so many different ways. But yeah, I agree with the whole adopting corporate culture. For me, venturing into my entrepreneurship journey had a lot to do with that, with all the politics, all of the humiliation, that you are put through. And I am the type of person that has always worked really hard. Always. I mean, I give it 110, if not more, to anything that I commit to. And to be treated like that when you know that you're fully invested is difficult. And so, yeah, that's kind of the reason that I decided to venture into my own thing, because I feel like we need to change that. I feel like there's so many toxic cultures out there. And, even as an entrepreneur, it's been very lonely for me. You're typically the very first person to go into work and you're the very last person to leave. So I can't fully say that I have the flexibility or the freedom now that I wish I had. But I can bring my kids along onto this journey if I want to. If I have a business trip, they're coming along with me. So it is a very lonely journey, but and I think toxic cultures you will deal with no matter what you venture into. Even as entrepreneurs, I'm sure we all know this, that there's a lot of envy, there's a lot of rage out there. And it's very unfortunate because I feel that, we're stronger together. And as entrepreneurs, I feel that it's important that we find ways to collaborate with one another. So that's my humble input, and this is Ada in the pink.
Ada with the fire. Always, always. I love your comments and your thoughts. And there's so much truth in everything that you just said that I'm like, ooh, we need to unpack a lot of that. But I'm gonna let Marisol give her share first, and then we'll come back and kind of unpack some of the stuff that you shared because I think it's important to dig in a little bit. So Marisol, how are you? Welcome back
Hi.
to. I haven't heard you in Clubhouse in like a week, but that's probably my bad. I've been away, but I think you were in California.
I was. I went away because I was able to, because I'm my own boss and I needed to unwind. What Ada said, I think she said that Tiffany mentioned the whole mom guilt thing. It's like a daily battle with that. As a woman and, owning her own business, it's so hard. Even if you do work for someone, I think it's harder. I don't know if it's harder. It's just as difficult to leave your kids when you have to leave at 5 in the morning. Like for me to start baking, or if I have an event, it's like it could be like a 2 day thing, a 3 day thing. But I make it happen so that I am able to take them on vacation. I'm able to be there for school events. I'm able to go to LA and just chill out because I can. um, but I became my own boss because I'm so tired of the kitchen culture. It's so male dominated, and it was like the gigs that I have had in the past, I've been sexually assaulted, like spoken down to. I mean, you name it, it has happened to me, and it's disgusting. So this is why I'm working towards having my own little bakery and hiring women and letting people rent out my kitchen so that, they can do what I do one day. Um, that's all I got right now because I have to watch my sauce. I'm sorry.
I love that you're like literally cooking right now. That's great. And yes, and welcome back. Glad you got back safely. So the mom guilt is interesting because I'm not a mom, but I know that even with my dog, I felt the mom guilt of like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving you all day. And then like, if she was sick or whatever, I would still be like, okay, sorry, sick dog, gotta stay here by yourself. And that is, I think, very much, something that ties you to your house. That it's interesting with the fact that a lot of us are working from home now, and we were working from home even, with COVID, whether you worked for corporate or not. But the mom guilt to hear, you say, Marisol, that it still exists as a women business owner is really interesting because what you're essentially saying is like, there's times when you're hustling that you still are having to make choices that don't allow you to fully be there the way you would want to be there for your children. But that also then allows you other opportunities when you can and you can choose, some other path. And so I think that's a great point, that you kind of have to sometimes you do have to be in that hustle mode for a little bit in order to have, another option at another time. So I think that that's important to speak into. And then I also know that, Ada, when you were talking about avoiding politics and humiliation in the workplace, I didn't want to gloss over that because I want to spend more time talking about it. So I'm going to open up the floor to anybody else who wants to talk about anything that Ada Sally or Marisol had shared. I'm also going to invite up Nick and Ray in case you guys want to come up and join our conversation. We're talking about the gift today, which is really the gift of entrepreneurship, which I'm adding a little bit to it, but it's basically the flexibility and the freedom to work with and when you want to be kind of oversight free, and then also to support the things that you want to support, whether that's your family or a social impact mission or whatever. There's so many other options of things that you can build into your business, including your corporate culture and all of those things. So let's come back to this idea of the toxic corporate cultures in a minute, but I just wanted to open up the floor, see if anybody.
Well, I wanted to add to it because something Marisol said is that the other thing that got me was I got tired of using my talents for someone else. Like I'm always going to work hard, but when you're working hard and using your talents for someone else and they don't appreciate it, I got really tired of doing that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do it for myself. Like I'm going to use my talents for me and it be appreciated. And it really has, when they say like, if you're doing something that you love, that you want to do, it doesn't feel like work. And I feel like I have another type of mom guilt because sometimes I feel like I'm spending the day and I'm like, I didn't work today, but I did. I worked all day. I was just working in my business. So it didn't feel like work, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I had one of those mornings. Makes total sense. I can describe it to you my way. I woke up, I walked the dog, I was on Clubhouse networking. I went to Pilates, but before I went to Pilates, I sent some last minute links and updated my website. Then I went to Pilates, then I bought toilet paper. then I came home and when I left the toilet paper in the garage for like 15 minutes, luckily it was still there when I went back. Nobody stole my toilet paper. But then I was able to come and start working, and I've been working like ever since then. And so, I was thinking like, oh, I didn't get any work done today. But then when I think about it, I'm like, no, wait, I did do a bunch of work in between doing all of these other things that were just daily life. And because you're able to do the daily life like the laundry at the same time as putting your groceries away and also networking on Clubhouse, like because you have this flexibility, sometimes it doesn't feel like work. And
Yes, I totally agree with that, Tiffany, as well. I don't know. I always thought that it was the legal industry that made me so calloused, and that maybe that's why I am the way that I am. But I think it's exactly what Tiffany has just mentioned, that you have given it your all to whatever you've worked in. And, she calls it your talent. And that's kind of how I felt. I felt like I was fully committed, not only because I was raised with solid work ethic, but because I was really, truly passionate about what I was doing. And I truly believed in my purpose in that position at the time. Um, but at the end of the day, what I discovered was that nobody cares. I don't know if any of you feel the same way, but as a single mom, it's been really hard, and nobody is going to knock on your front door to make sure that you have food on the table for your kids or that you are okay. Um, and so I think that's why I am the way that I am, because at the end of it all, I learned that nobody cares and nobody's going to be there to make sure that you wake up and that you are okay. Um, and we all have a sad story, I'm sure, but you have to learn to fend for yourself. You really have to learn to fight against it all because it's cutthroat competitive out there. I'm sure we all know that.
I think that's a great point. So, I work for a big Fortune 500 consulting firm, and one of the biggest things is they say you got to own your career, and that's something that's super resonated me since I started working there because I can totally relate what you're talking about, especially when we're dealing with federal clients. It's a different type of culture, and one of those things where if you're not a part of a tribe, luckily I'm a part of some tribes, the veteran tribe and some other tribes. But other than that, you have to own your career because no one's going to come rescue you in some cubicle you're all by yourself in. You're gonna need to speak out and really brand yourself and who you are and map out your career and your life. And so I you definitely hit the nail on the head, at least there for me. And I think when you're going to talk about culture, but culture is definitely really important to me as well. If you're not in a culture where you're not able to thrive, then you need to create your own culture with your own company. Create the business that you want for your life. And then I think Tiffany said it correctly. It's like you're giving your all. You have that work ethic. You definitely have the talent. But if it's not being um, groomed properly, or if you don't have that uh, openness to be able to use it to the next level, then it feels like you're constrained or you're restricted, right? And sometimes bureaucracy can get a lot in the way. But I don't want to steal your thunder when maybe you're going to talk about bureaucracy and culture. So this is Jeff, and I'm done speaking.
I could talk about bureaucracy for days. There's a lot of stuff in this conversation to unpack. So we'll go back to the corporate culture. I'll give you guys a story. So one of the stories I have not told this group, and I mean, like literally none of you guys have heard this story ever, which is interesting because I feel like you guys have heard so many stories. So in my federal experience, the reason why I left the government, the number one reason why I left the government, is this idea of not using my talent for somebody else, and also the idea of not wanting to be humiliated in your career and not wanting to, like Jeff was just saying, being stuck in this culture and this bureaucracy where you feel constrained rather than supported. And so what had happened was I started my career in the federal government as a fellow. So at a GS9, like a fairly low executive rate. but still on the higher scale of the GS scale. And I worked my way up to a 13, which like at the end of the scale, which means that, you know, it spent years and years, over 10 years trying to get to this level. And I finally got to the level of where I'm supposed to advance to be a team lead, which is like the next step in quote unquote management, but you're not really a manager even, you're still just like leading this team. So they didn't want to give me this promotion. Instead, they decided to make me do the work without actually promoting me. And as the new administration came, this is the beginning of the Trump administration, as the new administration came in and policies were changing, one of the things that was changing was that we were not allowed to be promoted from within. And it was like blanket policy. We're not promoting anybody from within, which, you know, for someone who's essentially been groomed for executive leadership in the government, that's like a slap in the face. It's like, okay, how dare you, after I give you 10 years of my life, don't even get student loan repayment for that 10 years. But I've been here, I've been doing the work, I've been training, I've been doing leadership classes, like been here, and you guys won't promote me. And on top of that, what they ended up doing was I had shared some union information because we were trying to organize around telework, which is really funny that they ended up having to put everybody on 100% telework, like literally months after this. But they were really not wanting us to telework more than 1 day a week. And we had previously been able to do like 3 to 4 or whatever. It was actually a fairly flexible schedule. So they needed people to, you know, come on this call and give examples of what's been going on in the agency because the union had no information. It was like a black hole. So I shared this union information on my Facebook chat with a few people off work hours, totally on my own. And we went to the union call, and our appointee found out about this union call and went on a witch hunt for everybody who was on it. And because I had shared the information and so many people in the organization got the information from my one message, because I'm such like a catalyst for people, they were really irked by it. And so I was, you know, in the middle of a phone call one afternoon, hanging out at my desk, and HR comes to my desk and is like, we need to talk to you right now. And I actually blew him off and was like, I'm in the middle of a phone call. Like, I'm not going to go wander off with you. It was just kind of funny that I would like literally told HR, go sit down. So he then said, okay, well, come to my office after. I'm like, okay. Cause I'm asking him like, what can you tell me right now what you need? And he's like, no. So I go to his office and they forced a lateral move on me away from the area that I've been working in for 10 years, essentially saying your expertise does not matter. The fact that you've been working here and are our nation's expert in these things, we don't care. We want you to come work in this. And we're going to say that it's because you're an expert. What we really want is just to control you. And because you are so powerful, we want to kind of put you in a place where there's not as many people you can influence. So they moved me to a program in the agency that eventually got cut and moved to CDC. They moved me to a floor of the organization that nobody was even on and put me in this like dark hole where literally the lights were out. And so, you know, this is just kind of a story of this like extreme things that can happen to you in the workplace in terms of like when you said that word humiliation, Ada, that totally just like hit a chord with me to tell this story, because the one thing that I did and that I like can always go back to was the very next day when it came time for me to show up at that move. Not only did I show up at the new place completely dressed with my makeup on and my earrings and like everything, heels, everything, I showed up and said, screw you. You guys are trying to do this to me, and I'm going to document everything that you're doing. And I went about that day literally writing notes and writing down everybody's name and what they said and blah, blah, blah. And I've had to several times for a lawsuit go back to that day and go back to those notes and pull information from it, because I wasn't going to take it sitting down that you would create such a horrible corporate culture in the government, of all places, where people are supposed to be able to, you know, at least support and help the public in the best way that they're capable of. And so that to me was just the ultimate slap in the face. And after that point, I literally said, I'm giving up my federal career. I don't know if entrepreneurship is going to work. I didn't directly start at that moment with my business in the way that I would have now if I knew what I knew now. But I was a little more trepid and scared. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to actually, you know, do this entrepreneur thing yet. But then when the second humiliation part happened and I lost my job after I had like given way more talent than I needed throughout the pandemic to public health, then that was like the ultimate slap in the face where I was like, okay, guys, like for real, I am done letting any government agency exploit my talent, put me in a place where I have to compromise my values, work for leaders who are not leaders that espouse the values that I espouse, and work for government organizations that are not actually working for the public in the way that I think they should. And so, screw this, I'm done. And that was essentially when I was just like, I'm going home and I'm starting my own business and I'm done. So that's how we got to here today, is like that whole long-winded story of like WTF, like what is this, and why do people have to go through these things to be able to create corporate cultures that don't treat people like this? And I think that then is sort of the second part. What Ada said about that is, what, and also what Kurt and a couple others shared, that you're able to then create the thing that you want to see in the void or in the space of that thing that you don't want. And I think that that's sort of the powerful part of this, and that's part of the gift, is being able to create what you don't see in the world. So I don't know if anybody wants to follow up with that, but that's my big story.
That's amazing. I don't even know how you would follow up on a story like that. You straight up got Milton there put in the basement when you said that. I thought about it.
Yes, yes. And I don't know where my stapler went either.
Well, I'm glad you decided to do it, and that's the right move. And I know it's difficult, and it probably still is difficult. So, but it's great.
Thanks. Glad. Thank you for being here. So that's how what my story was like. I'm sure some of you maybe don't have as extreme of a story of like get the hell out of this this corporate culture. But I think it's part of what Jeffrey said, right? Like these bureaucracies, these things that we're constrained by, that limit us, limit our potential. And I think that finally what we're hearing is a lot of people who are willing to take the risk to break free and to not be part of those toxic corporate cultures anymore, and to really say, hey, this doesn't resonate with me, this isn't how I want to live, and then making choices that that free you from it. And so I think that's all part of the gift.
Wendy, I am loving the conversation. I loved everybody's shares. I love what Ara said about believing your purpose. That hit me. And I've been, ever since you said it, Ara, I'm telling you, I've been like repeating it to myself, like believe in your purpose, like believe in your purpose and work as if you know and you believe that this is your purpose.
I was going to say, Ala, you hit it right on the nail on the head. Purpose is everything. But I do want to kind of just ask a question to the group in itself. So I mean, for anybody here, when did that mentality, of worker versus owner, at what point did you have to start thinking to yourself, I can't think like a worker, I got to think like an owner in your business? Was it early on? Was it in the middle? Would love to get someone's thoughts on that, because there's definitely a big distinction, right? When you're the worker, you're like, man, I got to be doing all of this. But then you're like, wait, I need to be thinking about an owner as far as like strategically planning, doing relationships, building, with customers and partners, suppliers. I would love to hear someone's thoughts on that, because that's definitely something that you have to have a shift in that.
Yeah, that's a great topic for another room. I'm going to write that down, because I think we can definitely do a whole room about that,
Oh,
Jeff.
okay.
But let's tackle it for now. But let's open it up and see if anybody has any answers today. But then we can definitely come back to it.
Oh my gosh, yes, that is a whole complete different room because there's so much to discuss just in that topic. But for me, I think it was just seeing how. So I was a licensed court interpreter, both at the district and federal level. It wasn't easy work, and the interpreters are probably the first court officials that people in a legal setting will want to wash their hands with, if that makes any sense. So there are a lot of politics involved, and you really, really have to constantly be on your toes and make sure that you protect yourself legally from every angle that you can imagine. But I guess for me, that mentality shift was just seeing how other court officials um, were respected and how much value I had to add to the whole process, but wasn't respected equally. And I have always been in male dominated industries, so I wasn't sure if it was because I was a woman or is it because I'm a Latina, AKA minority. I wasn't sure what it was about. But I knew that it didn't give me the sense of respect that I felt that I had earned, because I truly had earned it and worked for it. So that's when I started speaking to other colleagues of mine in the area that worked in the same industry, and I found out that in other areas, interpreters were not on salaries like I was, which was a huge blessing because I was on a salary plus benefits, which not a lot of interpreters had. But I also found out that there were interpreters being asked to empty trash cans throughout, the building when they were not in the courtroom. So little things like that started to um, really opened my eyes to how much work needed to be done. And not only as a Latina, but as an individual that was in a profession that deserves the respect that these interpreters out there that are working really hard deserve. So, it came down to negotiating salaries constantly, just knowing my worth and asking for what I felt I deserved. And it wasn't just the worker versus owner mentality, but it was, for me, the thank you versus the you're welcome mentality, because I no longer felt like I needed to feel um, grateful or had that attitude of thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity kind of mindset. It was more like you're welcome, because this position isn't easily filled. So I'm not sure. I know I probably went a little too long on that, but like I said, it could be a whole room.
Yeah,
So
I
this
don't, I
is
don't
a
want to say any more. Yeah, I don't want to take more talk, but I definitely know what you're talking about. From the thank you to the you're welcome.
yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
yeah, we can definitely talk
for
about that
sure. And for me,
later.
like Wendy and everybody else that has talked about just different incidents that where I was humiliated. I think it took that for me to be humiliated to wake the fuck up and actually realize.
Now that you've joined our community by listening to this podcast episode, I want to welcome you to participate in a conversation with our collective very soon. If you're not on the Clubhouse app, you can connect to me on any social media platform as Wendy Veloz, Veloz. I'd like to thank everyone in our community who participated in this episode, and especially my partners in crime, Santiago and Rodrigo. Until next episode, keep changing the world.